What if the very thing they mocked you for was the door to everything you were meant to become? His name was Ren, and from the outside, there was nothing remarkable about him. He lived in a small apartment on the edge of a city that had forgotten how to dream. The walls were thin, the winters were long, and the smell of instant noodles filled the evenings like a quiet kind of sadness. His father repaired shoes in a tiny shop below the building. His mother worked 2 jobs, a bakery in the morning, a laundry in the evening. They were not broken people. They were just tired, the kind of tired that settles into the bones after years of surviving instead of living. Ren wore the same 3 shirts in rotation. His school bag had a tear on the left strap, held together with electrical tape. He had no gaming console, no new sneakers, no birthday parties with many guests. What he had was a small screen, a pair of earphones with one side working, and a universe inside them. The universe of anime. Every night, after dinner, after the dishes, after his parents had collapsed into their separate silences, Ren would sit in the narrow space between his bed and the wall, what he secretly called his cockpit, and disappear. He disappeared into stories of boys with nothing who became everything, warriors forged by loss, outcasts who carried the weight of worlds, characters who bled and fell and rose again, not because the world gave them a reason to, but because they refused to let the world take their reason away. Man is not made for defeat. A man can be destroyed, but not defeated. Ernest Hemingway. Ren didn't read Hemingway yet, but he understood this truth in his bones because he had watched it animated, frame by frame, 100 times over. At school, it was not easy to be Ren. He was not a fighter, not an athlete, not particularly loud or funny in the way that earns approval. He was the kid who drew characters in the margins of his notebooks, the kid who, when asked what his favorite movie was, said the name of an anime film and was met with laughter. "That's a cartoon," they said. "You still watch cartoons?" He smiled and said nothing, but inside, something quietly hardened, not into anger, but into resolve. This is the moment most people never talk about, the moment when mockery becomes a crossroads. One road leads to shame. You bury the thing you love. You pretend it never mattered. You spend years becoming a slightly duller version of yourself. The other road leads somewhere much harder and much greater. Ren stood at that crossroads at 14 years old in the school cafeteria with rice on his tray and laughter in his ears. He chose the harder road. Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Bruce Lee. Ren began to draw, not just doodles in margins, but seriously, deliberately, with the hunger of someone who has found the only language that makes sense. He studied the anatomy of anime characters, the way medical students study bones. He watched frame-by-frame breakdowns on free video platforms. He read every forum, every tutorial, every behind-the-scenes interview he could find from the masters of Japanese animation. He filled notebook after notebook, 12 notebooks in the first year alone, each page dense with practice, failure, and slow, aching improvement. He had no teacher, no studio, no software. He drew on paper with cheap pencils and photographed his work with the back camera of a phone that had a crack across the lens. The crack left a faint diagonal line across every photo he took. For a long time, he thought this was a setback. Later, he would understand it was a signature. Aristotle wrote something that Ren would not discover until much later, but that was already true of his life. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Every morning before school, every night after dinner, every weekend when other kids were elsewhere being normal, Ren was in his cockpit, drawing, not because success was guaranteed, not because anyone was watching, but because not drawing felt like not breathing. At 16, his father's shoe repair shop closed. A larger store opened 3 blocks away and took all the customers within a month. His father did not speak about it directly. He simply became quieter, and the quiet had a different weight to it now. His mother added a 3rd job on weekends. The apartment, already small, somehow felt smaller. Ren looked at his notebooks and thought, "Who am I to dream?" His family was drowning in the real world, and he was spending his time drawing fictional people. He almost stopped. He packed his notebooks in a box and put the box under his bed. For 3 weeks, he didn't draw a single line. Then one night, unable to sleep, he found an old anime series he had not watched since he was 10. He watched it with adult eyes now, and he noticed something he had never noticed as a child: the suffering that had gone into making it. The documentary bonus content showed the animators working through the night, sleeping on studio floors,
drawing thousands of frames for scenes that lasted seconds. And they were smiling, not because it was easy, because it was theirs. He got out of bed, pulled the box from under the mattress, opened it, and drew until sunrise. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi. At 17, Ren created his first animated sequence. It was 22 seconds long. He drew every frame by hand, over 300 individual drawings, photographed them, edited them on free software, and added a piece of royalty-free music he found online. The animation showed a single figure walking through a gray city, and with each step, small flowers bloomed from the cracks in the pavement, anime style, vibrant, deeply personal. He uploaded it at midnight. He told no one. By morning, it had 200 views. By the next evening, 40,000. By the end of the week, 250,000. The comments were not from critics or industry professionals. They were from people, ordinary people sitting in their own narrow spaces between their own beds and walls, who wrote things like, "This is exactly how I feel every day," and "I don't know who made this, but thank you," and "I watched this 6 times and cried each time, and I don't know why." Ren sat in his cockpit and read every single comment, all night long. The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct. Carl Jung. What followed was not an overnight fairy tale. It was 2 more years of relentless work, submitting to festivals, being rejected, submitting again, learning digital animation tools on borrowed laptops, sleeping 4 hours a night, eating cheaply, refusing to give up. An animation school in another city offered him a partial scholarship based on his online portfolio. He worked part-time to fund the rest. He took the bus for 6 hours each way to attend weekend masterclasses. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and philosopher of the quiet mind, wrote in his private journal words he never intended for the world. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every rejection letter Ren received, he pinned to the wall above his desk, not as reminders of failure, as fuel. He graduated. His thesis film, a 12-minute anime short about a boy who grows up between worlds, was selected for an international student animation festival. It won the grand prize. The jury called it a film of extraordinary emotional precision, rendered with a visual language entirely its own. A major animation studio reached out within the week, then a second, then a streaming platform with a global audience. Ren, the boy with the torn school bag and the one-sided earphones, was suddenly being asked which project he wanted to do first. On the night his first professional series premiered, watched simultaneously by millions in countries he had never visited, Ren did not go to any celebration. He went home, to the apartment with the thin walls. His father had fixed a second light bulb in the kitchen. His mother had made the food he loved as a child. They sat together at the small table, and nobody made speeches. His father looked at the table for a long time, and then looked up, and his eyes said everything his mouth could not. Ren understood in that moment something the philosophers had been pointing at for centuries. that greatness is not a destination you arrive at and then rest in. It is a practice. It is what you do with love, daily in the dark when no one is watching. And the people who sat across from him now, tired, calloused-handed, gentle, had been his first teachers of that practice. Not because they had encouraged his anime, but because they had shown him every single day of his childhood what it looked like to keep going anyway. Wheresoever you go, go with all your heart. Confucius. If you are watching this and you are the one in your school, your neighborhood, your family who stays up late because of something most people don't understand, hear this clearly. You are not wasting your time. You are not lost. You are not behind. The thing that absorbs you completely, the thing you would do even if no one ever paid you and no one ever praised you, the thing that makes time disappear and makes you feel most alive, that thing is not an accident. It is a signal. The universe does not place fire inside people by mistake. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Friedrich Nietzsche. Your obsession with anime is not childish. It is your visual language, your emotional education, your daily seminar and storytelling, composition, character, and the deepest truths of the human experience delivered through the most honest art form of the modern age. The greatest animation directors alive today are people who once sat exactly where you are sitting now, watching exactly the kinds of stories you are watching, feeling exactly the electricity you are feeling. They did not succeed despite being anime fans. They succeeded because they never stopped being anime fans, and then they did something extraordinary with that passion. They showed up every day, in the dark, on cheap paper, with cracked screens and torn bags and empty stomachs and rooms full of doubt, and they drew the world they saw inside themselves until the outside world had no choice but to see it too. That is your inheritance. That is your luck. Not a shortcut, a depth. Not an escape from reality, but a way of seeing reality more completely than most people ever will. Now, close this video, open whatever tool you have, and begin.